Rain hammered against the cracked pavement of 5th Street as I lay there, my body aching in places I didn't know could hurt, my dress torn and soaked through, my lips split and swollen from the last blow he had landed before throwing me out of the car like garbage nobody wanted anymore. I watched shoes pass by, expensive ones, cheap ones, hurried ones, all of them stepping around me like I was a puddle to avoid rather than a woman bleeding on the sidewalk. Nobody stopped. Nobody even looked twice. I had learned that lesson many times before, but never as painfully as that night, when the man I had trusted with my whole heart decided I was worth less than the mud beneath his boots. I closed my eyes, telling myself this was simply how my story would end. Forgotten in the rain, another face nobody bothered to remember. Then I heard it, the low growl of engines. More than one moving slow, deliberate, like predators who had all the time in the world. 3 black cars rolled to a stop just feet from where I lay, and my heart sank even further because everyone in this city knew whose cars those were. Dante Moretti. The name alone made grown men cross the street. His convoy never stopped for anyone. Not for accidents, not for pleas, not for anything that stood between him and where he needed to be. But that night, for reasons I still cannot fully explain, the middle car stopped and the door opened. I expected Boots to walk past me too, another shadow indifferent to my suffering. Instead, a man knelt beside me in a suit that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. And he looked at me not with pity, but with something sharper. Something like recognition, like he had seen this exact kind of pain somewhere in his own life. He asked my name. I could barely whisper it. He asked who did this to me, and when I couldn't answer through my trembling, he simply nodded like he already understood everything he needed to know. He lifted me from that cold pavement like I weighed nothing. And the men around him, men I had heard were capable of terrible things, moved aside without a word, opening the car door, wrapping a coat around my shoulders, treating me like something precious instead of something broken. I remember very little of that ride except the warmth of the seat and the silence he kept, never pushing me to speak, never demanding my story, simply letting me exist without judgment for the first time in longer than I could remember. He took me to his own home, had his private doctor tend to my wounds, and gave me a room with a locked door that only I held the key to, telling me plainly that I owed him nothing and could leave whenever I wished. I stayed, not because I feared him, but because for the first time in years I felt safe. Over the weeks that followed, I learned that the man the city feared was not the man who sat with me during my nightmares, who never once raised his voice, who quietly made sure the man who hurt me would never find me again, and never spoke of it as a favor, only as something that needed to be done. People still whisper about Dante Moretti with fear in their voices, but I know the truth now that the most dangerous men are not always the cruelest. And sometimes it is the ones the world calls monsters who remember how to be human when everyone else has forgotten. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Kindness True Stories. For more stories that remind us, kindness can be found in the most unexpected places.